My parents begged me not to wear my uniform to my brother's wedding. "The military is embarrassing, Maya," my mother whispered, her voice tight with shame. "Just for one day, pretend you're normal. Don't ruin this for your brother." They wanted me to hide the last 4 years of my life, to pretend the sacrifices, the scars, and the sleepless nights never happened. They thought my uniform would make a scene, that it would take the spotlight away from their golden boy's perfect high society day. So, I made a choice. I didn't wear a traditional gown. I walked into that grand venue wearing my crisp Marine Corps dress blues, a brilliant silver star pinned firmly to my chest. The moment the heavy doors swung open, 150 elite guests went dead silent. My mother gasped, clutching her throat, while my father's face turned completely white. They thought I had humiliated them. But then, an elderly man in a tailored tuxedo locked eyes with my medal. He pushed back his chair, stood up straight, and yelled across the hall, "Silver Star in the room!" Suddenly, 12 older veterans among the guests snapped to attention and saluted. My family froze. They had spent years hiding me like a dark secret, completely unaware of what I had actually done out there in the dark. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Maya, and at 26 years old, I had finally learned exactly where I stood in my own family. To my parents, my older brother Austin was the golden child who could do no wrong. He was a corporate lawyer marrying into a high society family, the ultimate realization of their social ambitions. I, on the other hand, was the invisible daughter. When I joined the Marine Corps 4 years ago, my mother treated it like a dirty secret, telling her country club friends I was traveling abroad rather than serving our country. The text message arrived just 2 weeks before Austin's lavish wedding in a luxury hotel downtown. It was from my mother. "Maya, please don't wear your uniform to your brother's wedding. The military is embarrassing, and Austin's future in-laws are very refined people. Just for one day, pretend you're normal. Don't ruin this for him." I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the screen as a familiar, cold ache settled in my chest. They didn't care about the deployments, the physical toll, or the fact that I had just returned from a brutal tour overseas. They only cared about appearances. They wanted me to hide the single most meaningful part of my life under a pastel bridesmaid dress, all to protect a fragile social status. But looking at my freshly pressed dress blues hanging in the closet, I knew right then that I couldn't do it. Hiding my uniform meant erasing the sacrifices of the people I served with. I wasn't going to hide anymore. The rift between my parents and me hadn't started with the wedding invitation. It had been widening for years. When I first stepped onto the yellow footprints at boot camp, my father refused to attend my graduation, claiming he had an important business meeting he couldn't miss. For 4 years, while my text messages to the family group chat went completely unanswered, my parents were busy funding Austin's upscale lifestyle, buying him a luxury apartment, and bragging about his minor achievements to anyone who would listen. They completely cut me off from emotional support, leaving me to face the harsh realities of military service entirely alone. But what they didn't know, and what they had never bothered to ask about, was what had actually happened during my final deployment just a few months prior. While my mother was frantically emailing caterers and debating the color of the floral arrangements for Austin's big day, I had been trapped in a desolate, hostile valley half a world away. Our convoy had been ambushed, the sky raining fire, and the chaos that followed changed me forever. I had carried the weight of those silent nights and the memories of the comrades we lost back home with me, locked deep inside. My family treated my return like an inconvenient footnote, completely ignoring the visible exhaustion in my eyes because it didn't fit into their picture-perfect narrative. They thought my service was just a low-class phase I was going through, completely oblivious to the fact that the girl who had left for boot camp was gone, replaced by a battle-tested woman who carried a devastating secret under her armor. The night before the wedding, the tension finally boiled over during the rehearsal dinner. I had arrived in a simple, modest dress, hoping to keep the peace, but my mother cornered me near the buffet almost immediately. She thrust a garment bag into my hands, her eyes sharp with manic control. "You're wearing this tomorrow, Maya," she commanded under her breath. "It's the exact pastel silk gown I picked out for the bridal party. Your father and I won't have you showing up in that stiff, aggressive uniform. It's low class for the crowd Austin is marrying into. We have appearances to maintain." I looked down at the flimsy fabric in the bag, then back at my mother's flawless, unyielding face. A profound sense of clarity washed over me. To them, my service was a flaw to be corrected, an embarrassment to be covered up. But to me, that uniform represented the blood, sweat, and tears of the finest individuals I had ever known. It represented the brothers and sisters who didn't make it back to see their own families. Slipping into that civilian dress felt like a direct betrayal of their memory, just to make some shallow country club elites feel comfortable. "No, Mom," I said quietly, handing the bag back to her. "I won't be wearing this." She gasped, her face twisting in fury, but I walked away before she could utter another word. That night, back in my hotel room, I prepared my Marine Corps dress blues with absolute theatrical precision. I meticulously polished each brass button until it shone like gold under the lights. Finally, with steady fingers, I pinned the silver star firmly onto my chest. I was done hiding. The wedding day arrived, a flawless afternoon at a sprawling, high-end luxury estate just outside the city. I intentionally timed my arrival to bypass the chaotic morning drama, rolling up to the venue exactly as the reception was getting underway. Taking a deep, grounding breath, I stepped out of my car, smoothed down the front of my jacket, and walked toward the grand entrance. The heavy mahogany double doors swung open, and I marched straight into the grand ballroom. Instantly, the high society chatter dropped to absolute zero. The lively clinking of crystal glasses and the smooth jazz music seemed to instantly vanish, replaced by a suffocating, heavy silence that gripped all 150 elite guests. Every single eye in the room locked onto me. Standing tall in my crisp Marine Corps dress blues, the sharp contrast of the midnight blue fabric, the stark white cover in my hand, and the brilliant gleam of the medals on my chest acted like a physical shockwave moving through the crowd. Across the room, I saw my family's immediate reaction. My mother gasped out loud, dropping her champagne flute, her hand flying to her throat as pure panic flushed through her face. My father's jaw went completely slack, his skin turning a sickly, ghostly white as he glared at me with unbridled fury. Austin stood beside his new bride, his face twisting into a scowl of intense embarrassment. They thought I had intentionally sabotaged their perfect day, completely blinded by their own superficial anger. They believed I was standing there ready to endure a public humiliation, totally unaware that the room was actually holding its collective breath for a very different reason. My father immediately detached himself from the main bridal table, his fists clenched tightly at his sides as he began marching aggressively across the polished marble floor toward me. I could see the raw fury burning in his eyes, and I knew he was coming to forcefully throw me out of the venue before his wealthy friends could notice. But before he could even take 5 steps, a chair violently scraped back near the front of the room. An elderly, distinguished gentleman in a perfectly tailored tuxedo pushed himself to his feet, his posture instantly straightening with an unmistakable military rigidity. He locked his intense eyes onto the small piece of metal pinned to my chest. His jaw dropped slightly in sheer disbelief, and then his powerful voice boomed across the entire silent hall. "Silver star in the room." The effect was instantaneous. Suddenly, all across the grand ballroom, 11 other men and women of various ages, some wealthy corporate executives, Others, high society guests, abruptly stopped what they were doing and snapped directly to attention. They turned toward me, their expressions filled with a deep, profound reverence, and raised their hands in a flawless, synchronized military salute. My father froze dead in his tracks, completely paralyzed with confusion as he looked around at the most influential people in his social circle, paying absolute respect to the daughter he despised. My mother stood completely rooted to the spot, her eyes darting frantically from the saluting elites back to me. They were completely uneducated in military traditions, entirely unaware of what that medal actually represented. They had no idea that they were looking at one of the highest military honors a soldier could ever receive. The powerful gesture from the veterans shattered the high society hierarchy of the room. Within minutes, the wedding politics completely dissolved as the most prominent guests bypassed my parents and Austin entirely, crowding around me with deep admiration. My father managed to pull me and James Mitchell, the retired general who had first stood up, into a private holding room behind the ballroom. My mother and Austin rushed in behind us, slamming the door shut. "What is the meaning of this, Maya?" my father demanded, his voice shaking with a mixture of anger and deep embarrassment. "You completely ruined your brother's entrance. Why are our investors bowing to you?" General Mitchell stepped forward, his eyes flashing with utter contempt for my father's ignorance. "She didn't ruin anything, sir. Your daughter is a hero. Do you even know what a Silver Star means? It is awarded for gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States." He looked at me with immense respect, then turned back to my speechless parents. Maya single-handedly drove an unarmored vehicle into heavy insurgent fire to rescue 3 wounded Marines trapped in an ambush. She saved their lives while being wounded herself. The room went completely airless. My mother slumped against the wall, her face completely drained of color as the horrifying reality of her own shallow cruelty finally set in. Austin stared at me, his mouth opening and closing but unable to form a single syllable. For years, they had actively hidden me away like a shameful secret, entirely blind to the truth. They were completely paralyzed by a profound, agonizing wave of shame, realizing they had treated a national hero like a low-class embarrassment. I didn't stay for the rest of the reception. I quietly turned my back on their forced apologies and walked out of that estate, leaving my family to drown in the suffocating weight of their own shallow regret. In the months that followed, I officially cut all ties with their toxic dynamic, finally realizing that my true community wasn't defined by blood, but by those who respect sacrifice and honor. I packed my bags and moved to a beautiful coastal town, starting a completely fresh chapter surrounded by people who see me for who I truly am. Now, I'm deeply curious about all of you listening to my journey today. What would you have done if you were standing in my shoes? Would you have worn the uniform or kept the peace? Comment your thoughts below. Meanwhile, I am leaving 2 other incredible, high-retention stories right here on the screen that will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until the very end.